Have you ever wondered what it would be like to ride out a hurricane at Walt Disney World? Whether you're just insanely curious or if you are considering booking your trip during hurricane season and you want to know what could happen if the worst case scenario did happen and a hurricane did hit, then this video is for you. Hello my lovely humans, I'm Kenzie, and today I am at Disney's Wilderness Lodge where I have ridden out 2 hurricanes, if you can believe that. I've actually had 3 different hurricane experiences with Walt Disney World, which is kind of wild, but I've pretty much seen every case scenario. One was a Category 4 hurricane that hit the state of Florida extremely hard and Walt Disney World closed for 2 days. Another, the hurricane ended up kind of making a shift at the last minute, so there were only minimal impacts on that trip. And then the third, we couldn't even get to Orlando because of the hurricane and we had to reschedule our trip. So I'm going to share all 3 experiences with you because I know it's valuable, so you know what can potentially happen to you and all the different case scenarios that can go along with it. I will also share Disney's hurricane policies with you, so you know what the formal policies are and you can make informed decisions about your trip. And lastly, I will share if I think it's worth it to book a trip during hurricane season. So let's get started. I will start off by talking more about the hurricane I'm sure you're most curious about, and that is the Category 4 hurricane that closed Walt Disney World for 2 days. And that hurricane was Hurricane Ian. It is important to note that it was a Category 4 when it hit the state of Florida, but by the time it got to Orlando, it did obviously decrease in intensity and speed a little bit because Orlando is more inland. It is generally viewed as a safer spot to ride out hurricanes, so that is definitely an important thing to point out. In fact, most locals think that Walt Disney World is the safest place to ride out a hurricane, and many evacuees from the areas where the hurricane is projected to hit will come up to Orlando to ride out the hurricane at Walt Disney World. The reason why is not only because of the location, but also because of the infrastructure. All of the power lines are located underground, meaning it is very unlikely that Walt Disney World will lose power during hurricanes, which is fantastic. But also they have backup generators in case of emergencies. They also have very detailed plans in order to keep all guests and cast members safe during every level of hurricane and pretty much every situation you can possibly think of. So it is generally a very great place to be. Also, one important thing to note is that all of the structures here at Walt Disney World have been built to withstand a minimum of a Category 3 hurricane as well. So the infrastructure that's in place is also here to keep you safe. We started receiving notifications from Disney on Monday, September 26th, even though the hurricane did not technically hit until Wednesday, September 28th. But because this storm was projected to be just such a devastating hurricane, Disney went ahead and started making some closure decisions. So we were eating dinner at Raglan Road that night, and we got a push notification from My Disney Experience with some important updates. And that's what will happen if you are here. You will get a lot of notifications through My Disney Experience. And you also can just check the Walt Disney World website if you don't have the app for some reason and you are looking for those updates. So that's really nice. The update was essentially that certain parts of Walt Disney World were closing because of the hurricane, and they would be closed Wednesday through that Friday. The places that were closing make complete and total sense. So for example, the campgrounds at Fort Wilderness was a spot that's out in the open that was obviously closing, the cabins at Copper Creek, the overwater bungalows at the Polynesian, the tree houses at Saratoga Springs, the golf courses, and the water parks were all the things that were closing. And that we see generally to be true for every hurricane that hits this area. So that's usually like phase 1 of the plan, just for your awareness. Obviously, we started getting a lot of concerned phone calls and text messages and everything you can imagine from family and friends and coworkers wondering what in the world we were going to do and if we were going to be okay. So that definitely added a little bit to the overwhelm of the experience. But the thing with hurricanes is you never know what is going to happen. We do have great technology and models that help us forecast possibilities of how strong the hurricanes are going to be and where they're going to go. But at the end of the day, nature is a force of nature and you just don't know what's going to happen. They can turn at the very last minute. They can take a path that has a 1% chance or less likelihood of going, and you just don't know what's going to happen. The storms can be a lot worse than are projected. They can be a lot more minor than are projected, and you just never know. And there are several reasons that people do choose to stay or be at Walt Disney World during the hurricanes. One is maybe they can't move their trip. Another, which is what happened to us, is we couldn't get a flight out by the time it was looking very likely that it was going to hit Orlando. So you kind of have to deal with the airport situation and all of that as well. Obviously, the airport's going to be impacted because it's going to be closed for the hurricanes, but also you have to kind of deal with the departures as well. And so if you do have a flight out and it is like around the time it's going to hit, then just be aware there could be some headaches involved with that. Luckily, that wasn't our case scenario. Our trip was quite longer, so we didn't have to worry about the departures. But the good news is that if you do end up needing to stay at Disney longer, they will work with you. They'll try to give you a discount and things like that if they can, to help you stay a little bit longer until you can get a flight out. So do make sure you talk to them if you do end up in this situation. On Tuesday, September 27th, we were at Animal Kingdom, and there was so much chatter from everybody in lines and around the park, really concerned, obviously, about the hurricane and exactly what was going to happen to everybody. No one really kind of, knew all of the details yet, so there definitely was a lot of concern, which is another reason why I wanted to make this video, so that you would be aware of likely what would happen if you end up in this case scenario. And we ended up not hearing from Disney until later in the afternoon, which again makes total sense because you never really know what's going to happen with these hurricane paths, like I mentioned earlier, and obviously Disney wanted to be as sure as they possibly could be before making any decisions. But at that time, they let us know that the parks would be closed on the 28th and the 29th. They also let us know that the Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party was going to be canceled along with Hoop Dee Doo Review. So again, any kind of special events that are going on during hurricane closures obviously get canceled as well. So, I mean, I know it's kind of like obvious, but also important to point out. You can always ask to see if you can get it rescheduled if your trip is longer, but there are no guarantees since so many people are probably going to be trying to do the same thing. So that can be tough if you're really looking forward to something and obviously gets canceled, but safety is obviously the most important thing. So that's when we found that information out. And then later that afternoon, we actually found out more information. So we found out that if you are planning on sheltering through the storm and riding out the storm, that you needed to be checked into your resort by 3 p.m. on the 28th. We also found out that the dining options at the resorts would be limited and could be different from, what would be offered during normal times. If there was any kind of sit-down restaurant, that it may or may not be operating, and if it is, then there would not be reservations required, and so that it would be kind of like a standby, first come, first serve kind of situation. So that was really interesting as well. As we were leaving Animal Kingdom, we did notice that they were starting to take different precautions, and so they were like saran wrapping, I guess is the best adjective to use, the poles and the parking cones to the poles and the parking signs to the poles as well. So that was kind of interesting to see them kind of taking those precautions. We did end up hopping over to Hollywood Studios since Animal Kingdom closes early, and we wanted to soak up every ounce of magic that we could possibly get because the parks were closing. It did start to rain, but nothing too crazy. We ended up mobile ordering some food as well, just because we were so unsure of what the food situation would be like. And then when we got back to the resort, we actually stopped by the gift shop, which I do recommend doing if you do find yourself in this situation. They have games, so we ended up buying some fun games since we knew we'd be there for 2 days. We got some drinks and just some extra snacks, and a lot of people were doing this, but I just think it's a good idea to do that for sure if you end up in this situation. The next day was Wednesday, September 28th, which was Hurricane Day. So when we woke up, we decided to venture outside before things got too choppy, but it was really crazy because it was already like really rainy and windy. In fact, our umbrellas just completely blew inside out immediately when we walked outside. And believe it or not, the pool was still open, which we found totally wild. The cast members that were lifeguarding were truly MVPs out there in that weather. But all of the pool furniture had been put inside already, and there were a couple of like pieces of furniture that were kind of like not zip tied, but like tied very well to like the railings of the pool area. So that was also interesting. We also noticed again, those lights were kind of like zip tied and everything like that as well. So everything was very secure. But because of the conditions, we did decide to venture inside into the lobby. And that's when we saw the country bears. We were completely shocked, but they were actually there both days. And it was just so much fun getting to see them interact with different guests. And they brought so much magic to a very kind of like scary situation. So we really, really appreciated them and all of the cast members on the Ride Out crew that opted to be there for that. Like truly, they were so magical and just made the experience one we will never forget. We also saw kind of like a board of activities that they were offering. So that's something that Disney will do, is they will offer various activities throughout the day if this ever happens to you. Some examples of some of the things that they were offering were things like scavenger hunts or dance parties. There's also like our Are You Smarter Than a Country Bear trivia challenge. They had like a storybook fire time kind of situation that they were offering at night. They also offered movies throughout the day, so that was something else you could do if you wanted to. So plenty of things to do if you didn't want to like sit in your room, which was also super nice. The great thing about Wilderness Lodge is the lobby is so big that if people just wanted to sit in there and hang out and get like a change of scenery, they could, and we did choose to do that. Not every resort will have that option. Some will have like the rooms located outside, for example, and so it's like a lot harder to walk anywhere, and you definitely can't during the active storm, but even when things kind of die down, it's a lot harder sometimes to get back and forth with the rain and conditions. And if the lobby is small, then you might not really have an option to like sit in there, like the Riviera, for example, is super small. So that is one huge benefit of Wilderness Lodge. I will say plenty of places to sit and relax inside, and you don't have to go outside unless you are in the Boulder Ridge area, but they also have their own small lobby. So that is another point that I wanted to point out. Another thing that we noticed where they were offering meal kits. So the meal kits were extremely discounted. They were only $4 to $7, which was crazy. Never heard of something like that at Disney before, which was so nice considering the circumstances. The meal kits they were offering were things like, breakfast meal kits that included things like cereal and bagels, or lunch dinner ones with various different sandwiches and things like that that you could get. Luckily for us, the quick service location, the Roaring Fork, was still open, and you could even mobile order, which was so convenient. So we did do that for lunch. And that was nice because we didn't even really have to worry about the meal kits. And so we did go back to our room, and we noticed that the outdoor furniture that they had outside was taken inside, which obviously makes total sense. We noticed a lot of people were actually putting it in the hallway to like give themselves more space as well. And then we also noticed that they dropped off a flashlight and some kind of bag. Like we weren't sure if it was a tarp or a huge trash bag, but anyway, jury's still out on that one. That was there as well. So in case we needed them, we had a couple of different extras. We went back out to the lobby, and the sit down location here was also open, and so it was about to open, so a lot of people were lining up, which obviously makes total sense. And we did have to wait a little bit, but it wasn't bad considering the circumstances. They only had one like platter available, but it was half off, and the cast members there were also just making tons of magic for us, which was so unexpected. And again, memories we will never forget. There was one like singing the Hokey Pokey and getting everyone up and dancing, and all sorts of like fun things happening that were kind of distracting us from the gravity of the situation to come. So again, cast members, gold stars all around, Ride Out crew, amazing. We were just so very grateful for all of that because it was kind of a scary situation. After dinner, we decided to sit in the rocking chairs by the fireplace at Wilderness Lodge, which is beautiful and was a nice place just to relax and talk a little bit. And we got a push notification from Disney at 7, letting us know that they were going to ask us to shelter in place starting at 9 as the storm intensified throughout the night, since it was going to hit in the middle of the night. So we ended up staying there until 9. The country bears were out until 8, believe it or not. So that was kind of wild and totally unexpected. They were working overtime. And so we decided obviously to go back to our room at 9. Another thing that I should mention too is they had a huge pin board, like one that's larger than I've ever seen before, for people to trade pins. Like they thought of every little detail to make it as magical as possible given the circumstances. And so if this ever does happen to you, just know like it is a unique experience, and it actually is kind of fun. You know, it is what you make it, of course, but it was pretty fun. Throughout the night, we obviously heard gusts of wind and loud rain and things like that. And even before we sheltered in place, we saw the rain just kind of like blowing sideways. It looked a little bit intense. I'll insert the video for you so you can see it here. But overall, it was fine. You know, we got through the night. It definitely was a little bit scary, especially the sound of the wind, but we made it through. And the next morning, we got up on Thursday and we went outside just to kind of check out the situation. It was still raining a little bit, but ultimately it wasn't too bad. There was a lot of like tree branches and trees kind of down, but nothing like super crazy that we saw in those spots, like no major damage. We went back inside and the country bears were back again, and so we were very pleasantly surprised and grateful for that because they were so entertaining throughout these 2 days. As far as activities were concerned, it was a little bit, I guess, like amplified the second day. They had an activity going on every hour, which was super great, and they even themed it to a year and a day. So some examples of some of the things they did was like a shamrock dance party. They also did like a Halloween costume contest, which I thought was such a good idea because some people obviously got canceled on for their Halloween party and they probably had costumes they were looking forward to wearing, or maybe they went to one, you know, a previous day when it wasn't canceled, so they already had one in their bag. So I thought that was a really creative idea as well. As far as other things that were kind of happening throughout the day, like we noticed a couple of spots where like the roof was leaking into trash cans, but they had it under control, so that was good. Also, Disney had carts of towels and coffee throughout the resort as well, which we were also really grateful for and we thought was a very thoughtful thing to do. The food situation was very similar to the first day. So Roaring Fork and Whispering Canyon were both open. You could still mobile order from the quick service restaurant, which was great. And so we did that for lunch, and then we did the sit down again for dinner. I will say the second night for the sit down, like they were running out of a lot of food. So the options were a little bit different, but obviously that's totally fine given the circumstances. But again, like that kind of stuff can happen. So just know that and just have your expectations set appropriately. It was, again, extremely discounted and everything like that. So that we were really grateful for as well. And then after all of that, we decided just to kind of, you know, sit in the lobby and take it in. We ended up sitting in the same rocking chairs on both days. And so we kind of joke now that those are our chairs, and anytime we pass them, we kind of think fondly on those 2 days because we became weirdly emotionally attached to that spot and kind of the whole situation and event, since it was such a memorable and kind of like crazy thing to go through. At one point, Michael even drew the country bears. He's a very talented artist, and he had them sign them, so we'll always have that as well. And this is before they kind of went through their new, you know, redo. I know they have kind of a new look now and new names, so this was kind of the old school country bears, if you will. At one point, some funny things with the country bears that happened. They put on Hawaiian skirts and did kind of like a little Hawaiian dance for the Halloween costume contest, and that was seriously so funny. I'll never forget that. Another thing that was super funny is Big Al took over bell services at one point, and just like seeing him like interact with various guests was super hilarious as well, and that's another core memory that I won't forget as well. And so just like so many magical, unexpected moments happened throughout these 2 days. At the end of kind of the night, it was getting kind of late. We got a push notification from Disney letting us know that the parks would be open the next day and that everything was reopening in phases at Walt Disney World. So obviously they're going to start with higher priority things like the parks, for example, but things like some of those more like, you know, outdoor spaces that I talked about that were closing, like the bungalows, etc. Those weren't as high of a priority, so they don't open as quickly as some of the other things. And same with like the water parks and that kind of thing. So we were really excited for that, really grateful that we were going to get to go back to the parks, and really curious what they were going to look like after such a crazy storm. For those of you that may be curious about the state of the parks after a major hurricane, actually it was very well taken care of. We were really surprised. We later found out that Disney actually has crews that come and clean up as quickly as possible as soon as it is safe for them to do so in the parks and obviously the resorts and everything like that. But we went to Epcot that next day, and we did see, you know, a couple of things that like you could tell was kind of like storm damage or trees kind of being down or branches being down, but there was really nothing like that major. It was kind of like Disney magic. I don't know how else to explain it. Like, I don't know how big those screws are, but I can only imagine like how much debris there was alone. And they had it like completely taken care of. So we were really amazed. We did see like a really, really large tree by the Contemporary that was completely uprooted. I think that's like the craziest thing we saw. If I can find a picture of it, I will include it here so you can see what I'm talking about. But yeah, overall, we were really surprised. Like, the parks were in really good shape, and Disney does everything they can to get everything up and running as quickly and as safely as possible. Overall, it was such a crazy experience because there was so much magic happening, even though the circumstances were, you know, pretty heavy and kind of like dire, like something pretty serious was happening. But it was really easy to forget because of all the magic that the cast members from the Ride Out crew were essentially providing for all of us. And that's not beyond us, so we're forever grateful for all of them. Like, we know that they had to leave their own homes, potentially their own families or pets or circumstances, to come take care of us during that time, and they had to put that out of their mind too, even though like the hurricane was impacting them in other ways too. And so we're just forever so grateful for them and all the magical memories we were still able to like make during that time. So if you are ever at Walt Disney World and you can't get home and there's a hurricane, or you want to ride it out, or whatever the case is, just know like you will be very well taken care of. So I hope that gives you some peace if you do end up in that kind of situation for whatever reason. If you choose it or if you're stuck in it, just know like it's going to be okay. So I hope that helps. Also, just would like to point out that this was a very devastating hurricane to the state of Florida. So our hearts and prayers still go out to anybody that was impacted. A lot of people lost their homes, their lives went without power and water for several days. And like, that's not beyond us either. So it's really important to note that as well. The second hurricane was another Category 4 hurricane. It was Hurricane Helene. It was originally forecasted to be a very large, devastating hurricane for the state of Florida, but it ended up turning at the last minute and did not impact Florida that much, but unfortunately did severely impact several other areas. And so it was an extremely sad situation, and a lot of areas are still struggling and trying to recover from it. So again, my heart and prayers go out to all of those people. But it's another example of you just never know what's going to happen into the last minute. Sometimes with these hurricanes, the path that it ended up taking was a very small percentage of likelihood, and it did. So you just never know sometimes. But with this storm, we were again here at Walt Disney World on vacation. On September 24th, we got our first notification from Disney letting us know they were monitoring the storm. And then on the 25th, we got notifications that they canceled a lot of the tours at Disney's Animal Kingdom. So these are, you know, specially ticketed events essentially that they were canceling. We actually had a Keys to the Kingdom tour the next day, but they did not cancel that. So on September 26th, we were still able to do that, which we were very grateful for, but it was very windy and very rainy and was not a fun time to be in the parks. But we were still really glad we were able to do it. So that was memorable for sure. And then as far as like what else happened, they ended up canceling Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. I really think that was the right call because the wind and the rain was just totally crazy. They ended up closing a lot of the transportation, which again can happen with these weather conditions. So they closed the Skyliner, the boats, I think even the monorail was closed, and that was kind of crazy. But of course, like, Disney will provide backup transportation when that happens. So we were able to take the bus back to Wilderness Lodge, and they had towels waiting for us and all the good things when we got back. So we were really grateful for that as well. But yeah, ultimately the storm took a sharp turn, didn't really impact Florida, definitely not Orlando. And the next day it was like nothing ever happened. So it was very minimal impacts. They ended up also like increasing the hours that day for Magic Kingdom, because originally it was supposed to close at 6 because of the Halloween party, but they ended up keeping it open till 8 for people. So they extended the hours a little bit. But that's an example of, if you do kind of roll the dice, if a hurricane is expected to hit, it may just be nothing. And if a bunch of people end up canceling, it could be lighter crowds, but that's just a gamble that you have to take. You just never really know with these hurricanes. The third hurricane example I have for you is Hurricane Irma, and this was a while ago. This was back in 2017, and we had a trip booked, but we ultimately were not going to be able to get to Orlando because of the weather. So we ended up calling Disney. We had to wait on hold for a very long time, but once we finally got a hold of them, we were able to see what our options were. And we could have canceled the trip if we wanted to, and they would have given us our money back at that time, or we could have rebooked the trip, which is what we decided to do. One thing about this this though is it really kind of depends on what's available, right? And like what your flexibility is and all of those sorts of factors. Luckily, we were pretty flexible and they were able to get us in a couple of weeks later, but it was not for the same resort that we originally wanted to stay at. We originally wanted to stay at Animal Kingdom Lodge, but they didn't have any availability for Animal Kingdom Lodge for like 8 months, and we didn't want to delay our trip that much. And so we ended up deciding to stay somewhere different, Port Orleans, French Quarter, which we ended up really liking, by the way, but it was not our first choice. But because it was less expensive, we were able to extend our trip, so we felt like that was a win. So we did decide to take that option. But one downside, if you do that and you like make your trip somewhat soon after your original trip was supposed to be, if there is availability, is you lose all of your reservations. So all of the dining reservations and special experiences and tickets that we had, we lost, and we had to like start over. And because it wasn't like a full 60-day window, it was a lot harder to try to get the dining reservations we wanted and to get all the original plans that we had back in place. So it was a little bit of a headache, but we were grateful we were able to do it and still go and not have to wait too long. And of course, if you push it out further, then you won't have that probably, because you'll have to redo it, but it won't be as bad because you'll be doing it at the same 60-day window as everybody else basically. But it's just something to think about if it does happen. But there is flexibility. If there is a hurricane coming, you don't want to risk it, you don't want to go, or you can't get out and you can't go, then you can cancel or you can reschedule. There is a little bit of debate about the tickets though. Some people say the tickets are non-refundable no matter what. Some people say that it is. It kind of depends. Disney's formal policy on it is that it's on a case-by-case basis. So you may get lucky, they may give you a refund for them, or they may say, no, like they're non-refundable, but you can use them basically whenever you want. So just keep that in mind. You may be asking yourself, what is the fine print? What is Disney's official policy when it comes to hurricanes and cancellations and rescheduling policies? So I'm going to go ahead and answer that for you. Disney's formal policy states that if there is a hurricane warning issued by the National Hurricane Center for the Orlando area or for wherever you live, which is also nice, within 7 days of your arrival date, you can reschedule or cancel your trip without having to pay any of those fees that you would normally have to pay for doing something at the last minute. So that part is really fantastic. Of course, there are some intricacies when it comes to all of this. As my example earlier highlighted, you may not be able to get the exact trip that you had booked, depending on your availability and the availability of the resort. So you kind of have to take that into account. If you booked with a discount, you may not be able to get that discount, so you may have to pay more for the exact same trip. But from our experience, Disney really does try to do the right thing when it comes to these situations. They try to, give you something that's going to make you happy, make you excited. So they do everything they can to make it right. But at the end of the day, the policy is there obviously to protect them, and the fine print with the tickets is a great example. But from our experience, they certainly do everything they can to provide the most magical experience possible. And it is worth it to be flexible, in my opinion, because Disney trips are just so magical no matter where you stay or what you are doing. Hurricane season in Florida is long. It runs from June 1st to the end of November. So it is a long time period. The months that are most common for hurricanes to hit are August and September. So take that as you will, but it can happen anytime during that time. So just keep that in mind. One thing is, if you do want peace of mind about your trip, is you can purchase travel insurance that will help cover incidences, as long as the policy states that it covers weather instances. So just make sure that it does. Obviously, Disney will do everything they can to help with refunds and rescheduling and all of that, but they don't cover things like flights and rental cars and all that kind of stuff. So that is something to consider. The biggest burning question remains: should you take the risk and book a trip to Walt Disney World during hurricane season? Well, I think it really just depends on your circumstances. Hurricane season is so long in Florida that it's almost hard to avoid, honestly. And I do think that it is okay to book during hurricane season. Obviously, I've done it several times in one of the most hurricane active months, September. And it has obviously happened to us a couple of times at this point. So I think it is okay to do. You saw the case scenarios, you saw what could happen. So hopefully that helps give you peace of mind if you do decide to book during hurricane season. If it's a non-starter for you though, and it gives you a lot of anxiety and stress, then maybe you don't book during those times of year. But if it does help to put things into perspective, since 1999, Disney has only closed Walt Disney World for hurricane related like issues for 13 days. And that's really not that bad. So for the most part, they don't have to close because of hurricanes, which is really great. And if they do, then you do kind of get a special experience that you would normally not get, although you do have to miss out on some of the park days and things like that, and that is a bummer. You do get a different type of experience, and you can make magic no matter where you are. I hope this information was helpful for you and empowers you to be able to make the right decision for you if you are comfortable booking a trip to Walt Disney World during hurricane season or not. Or maybe you were just really fascinated by the topic like me. I know I was before we had the experience, but either way, if you would like to see me again, which I hope that you would like to, it would mean so much to me if you would subscribe, like, and hit that bell notification so you are notified next time I post a video. And in return, I promise to keep showing up for you each and every week, and I will continue to try to be better each and every week. Also, a huge heartfelt thank you to my patrons who are the heart and soul of this channel. Without them, this channel would not exist, and we wouldn't be able to have fun conversations like we're having today. So if you'd like to join us and you would like more behind the scenes content with me, then the link to join us will be below. Until next time, I'm Kenzie. See you real soon.